Great. So what's going to happen is it's a hypoglycemia is basically what you're asking me about, is like, how do we get, on top of it quickly and go, oh my God, I'm hypoglycemic. This can get cascade and get worse. And if you have a good physician, if you're working with a good, somebody who knows what they're doing, they can catch it early and give you the right recommendations to send the whole thing backwards, right? Because we know, I worked with Dr. Gabriel Cousins for 20 years, and we know that diabetes type 2 is really a syndrome. It's not really a disease. It's just, insult upon injury upon injury upon insult over and over. And eventually the cellular membrane.
1,000 cuts.
Yeah, it's like that straw that finally gets you, and you've got to turn. Once you start getting the markers, you got to start pushing it back the other way. And one of the key ways to do that is to get the omega-3 in, and also do a detox and cleanse and sponge your system out and get the glue out. When we become conscious about food, as you have, I'm sure you realize, like, oh, I'm not going to eat that. That food is like going to sit like glue, or it's going to stick to our ribs. We have these phrases for a reason, right. And eventually we get glued up, or we get calcified. And that what occurs is the sugar can't get into the cell. That's one of the major symptoms. And so it bounces out. So then we have to use insulin to bring that to control the blood sugar. And on an initial insulin response, there can be an overreaction. That's a hypoglycemia. But if there's an underreaction due to repeated overreactions, that's diabetes. Mm-hmm. And so eventually your body can't control the blood sugar.
Is it possible to reverse diabetes?
Absolute diabetes type 2, yeah. And some types of type 1 in my experience, because I've known a couple people who've reversed type 1, but I don't necessarily believe that type 1 is all one disease. It's probably 20 different conditions that are all lumped together and be called diabetes type 1. That's just it's kind of a simplification of what's really going on. It's an oversimplification. Diabetes type 2 is definitely a syndrome and can be reversed with lifestyle and diet, in particular dietary changes.
So what would be let's say the 3 most impactful things that somebody could do if they are diabetic already, or maybe just pre-diabetic and at the cusp of it potentially?
Number one thing is get the omega-3 fatty acids in and stop the rancid omega-6 from coming in. So we got to change the quality of oil that's coming into that person's body. And avocados and olives and things that have natural monounsaturated fats and things that have natural saturated fats, and also in particular the omega-3s are helpful, but I focus more on the omega-3. Next thing is then you got to do the tissue cleansing. That has a lot to do with bowel cleansing. So a lot of times when people get diabetic, they get backed up with waste, and that will show up as excess weight. So we've got to get the weight off. And sometimes you can't get the weight off until you pull the plug out of the bathtub, and that means bowel cleansing. And that means colonics and enemas and laxatives to just get things moving and get the lymph draining, because your lymphatic system drains into your large intestine, and that will come out as your quote-unquote poop. So you might be eating a lot less, which I'd recommend for diabetics, and get moving more to improve circulation, improve cellular respiration. But until we pull that plug out and really drain and get the old feces out, metabolic waste out, we're in trouble. Another thing that's very helpful is certain types of supplementation, especially probiotics and enzymes. I'm a big enzymes fan. And I would say, of course, activated charcoal is excellent in the morning. My recommendation for people who really want to get into activated charcoal is, instead of just taking it when you have an upset stomach, literally take it in the morning 5, 6, 7 days a week. I do, and with water. And because, right, we were talking before about your friend who has
so Dr. Anthony J, yeah. When I interviewed him, we talked about activated charcoal and the importance of not drinking just water right out of the tap, to have it go through activated charcoal filters to get all the estrogenic compounds out of it, because there's a lot of that's in the water, and they don't filter that out. The municipal water supply, it's great at getting like the big nasty bugs out, but the estrogenic compounds not good at all. They don't even try. So that was important lesson I got out of that episode. But I drink purely living spring water. I don't. We don't drink tap water.
So if we think about our body, our body's a filter. It's a series of filter layers, right? That's one way to understand all these tubes in our body. It's like, what are we really doing? Like, we have layers and layers and layers of filtration that don't allow things from our skin all the way in. There's an ability for a body to go, hey, stop, that molecule's too big or whatever. And carbon or charcoal is a really good thing to add into your own filtration system, which is your own body. And the best time to do that is in the morning. And again, there's no research on charcoal that indicates it absorbs healthy nutrients, which is a big, one of the biggest misconceptions about charcoal. Every time I bring this up in front of an audience, almost everybody in the audience is like, well, what, doesn't it absorb vitamin C, or doesn't absorb protein, or doesn't absorb healthy nutrients? And there's no evidence of that. 70 years of research of scientists trying to prove that activated charcoal absorbs healthy nutrients. So it's selective, which is very, very interesting. Now, you'd think we've got a good scientific theory as to how it's selective. We do not. We do not. It's either, depending on who you're listening to, they say, oh, it's pi stacking or van der Waals forces or a combination of both. But even then, it doesn't explain how charcoal acts at a distance. Charcoal acts at a distance and as a purification element. So when you put charcoal through your body, it will pull all the toxins out of your whole system. And the idea is, instead of just, I really recommend doing a big cleanse at least once a year, usually twice a year. We do it at the end of the summer, at the end of the winter. Really good times to do cleansing. But on the regular, you should have some charcoal in your diet, because we're breathing on automobile fumes every day. We're breathing in all different, God knows how many chemicals you breathe in, brake dust on a freeway, from all the braking that's going on. Those dust particles, that's like asbestos. It's the worst. So we've got to protect our body with a constant something that filters, like our liver does. Basically, we need another liver. Is there anything like that? And the answer is yes. It's activated charcoal. And the filtration mechanism in science is actually called interstitial dialysis. We've heard those terms.
Very scientific.
Right? But dialysis, I've heard that term before. By the way, when you go for dialysis and they're filled, because somebody's kidneys aren't functioning anymore, what are they using in that filter system? It's activated charcoal. That's what's in the dialysis machine. It's also, of course, in air purification systems as well. Right. So it's a good